Hi, Walter.
Hello.
This is Walter, my neighbour. I'm Jack. I have been in America about 26 years, and one of my first impressions of the United States was the degree of racism that is here. I'm from the UK originally, and I'm not to say there isn't racism in the UK, because there is, but it's far more pronounced here in the US, and I've had this idea to do a documentary for some time to talk about it, and opportunities come up now to talk to somebody who doesn't have my skin colour about racism in the US, and I'm going to talk to Walter. And you have, we've been neighbours a couple of years.
Yeah, about 2-3 years now.
Yeah, and we've talked a bit, haven't we? We've talked not in great depth about much at all, really, but I think we've got the sense we could get on. I wanted to talk to you a bit about your experiences of racism and what you believe race to be, and just about the subject of having a different skin colour in America. You are not originally from here, from Santa Fe. You're originally from where?
So originally from the East Coast.
Yeah.
Grew up in Virginia, Maryland, finished high school in Texas, and then I've spent pretty much my entire adult life here in New Mexico.
Okay, right. So you're from back east and the south as well, so Texas, places that are kind of considered to be quite racist. Would you say that's more racist than where we are here?
So, to be honest, I don't think I ever had one blatant racist incident living in Texas.
Oh, really?
When I was there. The East Coast growing up, definitely. But New Mexico, by far, is probably the most racist place I've ever
Oh, is that
lived.
really so?
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely.
Wow, that's a shocker. I would have thought otherwise.
And
So
I know a lot of
surprised.
people say that.
Yeah. I assume that. Oh well, there we go.
Yeah.
So, how does that present itself then? Racism, in your experience, to you personally?
Most times it's really passive. So, for instance, like when we're looking for places to live, like I usually won't go with my wife anymore because as soon as they see me, it's like a no deal for them. One time we had gotten this house, we were there to sign the paperwork. The guy was all on board. As soon as he saw me, he stopped talking really. He wouldn't shake my hand. He wouldn't even look at me. And he just told us that he didn't think it was going to work out. So it's usually like in the form of things like that.
And that's because your wife did the original negotiation, right? And,
Yeah, so
Walter's wife is white.
Yeah, so my wife is white. We have mixed children. But yeah, so usually I would be at work, in her off time. She would, look at places and things like that when it was time for us to move. And we quickly found out that it was best for me not to meet whoever we were going to rent from until the very last moment, pretty much.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
I know. I can remember experiences like that in Britain. There was a friend of mine that there was a black neighbour going to move in, going to buy a house. I mean, I lived in the projects in a council estate in London, but my friend was quite middle class, and his parents owned. I think his dad was only alive at the time. His dad owned the house, and the black neighbour was going to buy one of the houses in the cul-de-sac. And apparently the other neighbours clubbed together to buy the house, so stop them buying it. So I'm very aware of that kind of stuff. There's always gone on. That people of higher melanin content face that kind of thing. What is race to you? What does that mean to you, the word?
I mean, honestly, for me personally, it doesn't mean a whole lot. other than what I have to deal with, just simply for being black, right? Having to work harder, having to be smarter, having to avoid appearing to fit stereotypes.
What does that mean?
So, like, for instance, stereotypes like black people are lazy, don't want to work, never on time. I'm always, like 30 minutes early to work.
You have to go the extra mile to show
Mm-hmm.
that. Right,
I've always had to work, 2-3 times as hard as my peers to receive the sort of same credit for work. Yeah, just things like that, knowing that I have to control my emotions at all time. Otherwise, I'm just, considered an angry black man.
And that's another stereotype, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's things like that, really, for me, are what encapsulate race. For me, it's not a big deal, but, it's still very much a big deal in the world we live in.
Right. What would you say percentage-wise of people with my colour skin or other, Hispanic people, particularly in this state, are racist?
I don't know if I could put a percentage on it, but if I had to, just based on my experience since I've lived out here, 60+%.
Right, more than about 2/3 are kind of pretty racist, and that's across the spectrum to extreme racism, to kind of light racist light
Right.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that you represent most? There's another term, Black, African American,
Right.
all the terms that there are. What is to you the correct term? Is it Black, African American?
Just black, yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Because I get a bit stuck with that.
In school they use the term African American a lot, or
What always gets me, because it's not a race in as much as,
Right.
if a Jamaican guy from London comes to America, he's not an African American, he's a Jamaican guy. So again, there's the race thing. What race is it?
well, and you have that aspect too, right? People that look like me but that aren't from this country.
Yeah.
And it really only goes two ways with those people. Either they are okay with black people, or they want to stay as far away from you as possible, because of all the preconceived notions and the things you see on TV about black people. And
So do you experience racism within the black community then?
oh yeah, for sure.
And how
You'll
does that
experience it.
And how does that manifest?
So, honestly, it really depends on where you live, right? So, say, for instance, like, you live in the hood or the projects, most people living at below poverty line. Like, being smart isn't always safe.
All right. So you kind of dumb down a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my experience growing up as in a working class.
Done a lot of that, pretending to not be as smart as I am, to fit in, to blend in. Like light-skinned people can have a pretty hard time in our community. Even if they're not mixed, if they just come from a line of people that are, really fair-skinned, they can have a hard time. Mixed children generally have pretty hard time.
So go on the subject of children. Was there a point in your childhood when you got the talk?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got that talk. Probably 8, 9 years old.
Had you experienced any racism prior to that?
My first time that, really sticks out for me that I experienced, racism, would be when I was, probably between the ages of 9 or 12. I was still living on Andrews Air Force Base.
Oh, you're an Air Force base, so that would kind of put a little bit of a skew on things for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I had this kid, he was white. We were, really good friends for a long time, and we were at the park one day, and I forget exactly what happened, but he ended up calling me the N-word, and, for me as a young man, especially growing up, you know, I was taught to defend myself if someone ever did that. And so, you know, we fought, and his father came over, you know, banging, screaming on the door. My mom wouldn't answer it, you know. She told him, you know, your son called my son the N-word. They fought. That's what happened. If you want to talk about it, you can wait till my husband gets home. And, you know.
So did that word come out in a fight, then in the middle of a fight, as a way to kind of get back at you or something like that, or an attack?
So, yeah, we were arguing about something. I mean, it was probably something as simple as toys or whatever. We were, like, at the park across the street from our house playing. And I just, you know, remember him saying it and just feeling like if I didn't defend myself, that would probably become the norm for him and other people like him to think that was a way they could speak to me.
So there was a strong sense of needing to kind of defend your... What am I trying to get at here? Is the business of being black in America that you feel that you're objectified? Is that really it?
I mean,
you are less than some people.
So, I mean, you could be treated that way, right? I think the way you feel is how you live your life and how you've been raised and, you know, what you know to be true for yourself. But, I mean, yeah, I for sure think there are plenty of people that think black people are less than, you know, and same with, you know, other races and stuff. You know, there are black people that are overtly racist towards other groups just simply because they're not black. So I don't think it's something as simple as, you know, it's only black people dealing, you know, with this particular issue. I just think that we've dealt with it longer and more than any other group in America.
Well, I mean, I think what kind of... I mean, in Britain it was to some degree the same. I think what happened was that people were brought in from Jamaica and Trinidad and places, cheap labour. And I think what the difference with you know, African Americans is that they were brought in as free labour. Do you know anything about your roots as far as like ancestors and any stories about slave ancestors that were slaves?
So, we definitely had slaves in both sides of my family, on my mom and dad's side. My granny's mother, my grandmother, when she was growing up, they were still picking cotton, not in the slave sense, but still as labor in Ohio. Yeah, I mean, you know, they lived through the Black Panther era. My mother's father was a Black Panther, all the way up until the crack epidemic hit.
Right.
He had got on that.
Do you know how he got involved in that? Well, tell us a little bit. I mean, I don't know too much about the Black Panther.
So, my family used to breed German Shepherds for the police force in Cleveland. And so, not necessarily adversarial to police, you know. They worked with the police for many years, hand in hand. Yeah, I don't know much about my mother's father. I know he died while they were all still pretty young. Yeah.
Have you ever had any leanings towards some sort of militancy as far as like some things like that?
I mean, definitely believe in, you know, my Second Amendment right, you know, and I think especially now more so in recent years, you know.
Since certain political changes in the past.
Well, not just because of that, but just more so, like, you know, the more knowledge is available, you know, I feel like more black people who don't have records and, you know, who aren't felons, who haven't been in trouble, you know, realize that, you know, they can get a concealed carry permit and it's not a big deal, you know, their rights have to be respected.
Do you think that, I mean, when did emancipation happen? When was that?
I could not tell you off the top of my head.
Do you think that freedom of self-expression and general freedom for people of your skin colour is advancing, or do you feel that it's a constant battle to establish yourself?
I think it's both at the same time. I think, obviously we've come a long way, but there are still, many systems in place that would like to keep you in a certain place or a certain stature,
Yeah.
a certain point in life.
How did you feel when Obama became president?
So when he first became president, I was really happy. I was really proud. Really excited to see some change happening, and he turned out to be like every other president. Telling you a bunch of sweet nothings.
Well, it's interesting because it was a black neighbour when I was in Texas. He said the same thing. He said that when Obama was elected, he cried. And 2 years later, he was just as pissed off with him as anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, as far as for me, and like a majority of my family, we were pretty disappointed in him. I didn't vote for him again.
Oh,
for
you
sure. No, I voted for him once, but and that was the first time I had ever voted. I was finally 18.
Did you vote the second time, though?
For him?
I mean, did you vote at all?
So I personally
don't have to answer that.
So I personally believe that if none of the people who have been picked or chosen or voted for represent your interests, you shouldn't just go with whoever's closest, or as like my mom would say, the lesser of two evils. Why would you vote for evil at all? You know what I mean? Democrats are very passive about their racism, still very much racist, whereas Republicans are more so upfront, in your face about it.
So you feel in some ways that that's a better thing?
So we as a people have a right to abolish our government if it's not working for us, and I don't think a lot of people realize or even know that. And I think if we got to a point where people withheld their votes and said, no, like this doesn't work for us.
Right.
We're not just going to vote because everyone says, oh, go out and vote. If you don't vote, you don't have a voice. Well, if the person you're voting for has no intention of being a voice for you, why would you vote for that person?
What would you have liked to have seen? What kind of president would you have liked Obama to have been then?
Like how Trump came in and did everything for people of certain tax brackets. I'd have liked him to came in and did that, change laws, do things that he could do.
More aggressive about his approach to governing, right? Change the subject a little bit. Race. My view of race is it doesn't exist. We're part of the human race.
Right.
Genetically, you have a browner skin than me. Your hair's a bit different. But underneath you bleed the same blood. I mean, your skin colour is different. My wife's hair colour is different. I've got blue eyes. I know white people with brown eyes. To me, it's just a feature. Ultimately, it is. There is no such thing as race. What are your thoughts about that? About the fact that it is race is a construct, it's an illusion, it's nonsense, ultimately.
For the most part, I agree with that. I just think as long as people continue to teach, their offspring, their family, to hold on to racist ideals and views, it'll never go away.
Right.
I almost feel like things will have to get so bad before everyone will come together and say, hey, we have to let this stuff go.
Yeah,
just to make it.
I mean, my thoughts, I've heard people say, I can have no opinions because I'm not black about race. But logically, it does seem absurd to me that while you carry on with this issue, how can it go away? It's self-perpetuating to talk about race. I mean, the idea of, I always imagine 2 5-year-old children playing, and one can say the N-word and the other can't. It seems to me an absurdity, you know. I personally, I can't understand. Well, I can understand why it's a problem, but I do kind of think that keeping race as a reality, that you are different because of the colour of your skin, to me, seems insane. But how do we get past that, though? That's the thing. Because it seems to me a lot of people want to carry on with the argument. A lot of people want to do that. How do you think that's going to have a shift? Do you think it's really just going to get to a point that it's going to be so bad?
That's what I believe will happen. I think as long as we allow corporations free reign to do whatever they want and just destroy whatever they want with minimum to no consequences, that will eventually become our reality. That things are just so bad that people don't have time or energy to waste on wanting to hate or dislike someone simply for the color of their skin.
Right.
Because they're going to be worried about, air quality, food.
Oh, I see. Well, that's been said
that
the only thing that unites people is a common enemy, and I think to some degree that's true. I remember after 9/11, people in the streets of New York, like black people and white people, like kind of hood rats and cops, working together to kind of make it happen. And I remember thinking that there might be hope for America, that people might come together, but of course it didn't happen. It was like a wake-up call and everyone hit the snooze button.
Yeah, you always get these tiny glimpses or glints of hope that, maybe people do have a bit more common sense than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
And then,
Right.
there's always some new thing created or something to happen to create that division again. But I mean, honestly, realistically, the only way it would ever really stop is, I believe, all those older generations of people making race an issue, teaching the hate and stuff like that, they would have to all die off.
Yeah.
And not be able to teach that to future generations.
Right.
Because it's a taught thing, right?
Maybe it's just a generational thing that will die out as people kind of become more aware. One thing that's always interested me is the one drop phenomenon.
If you have any black in you, you're black.
Can I ask you, what percentage of you are white? Because you have got some some white blood, right?
I know we have some white people in our family. I met them like a long time ago, probably back when I was in like 5th grade. So I don't know. I've never done like a.
But I do
DNA
think it
test
odd.
or anything.
I mean, I've always thought it odd that one black person and a white person get together and they have a child who is black. But in theory, they're as much white as they're black. I mean, Obama is as much white as he's black. Right. He's called black. And if the children of white and black parents have more children and they have children with a white person, they're still black. And I've always thought that absurd, and that's the old one drop phenomenon, isn't it?
Well, it's the reality that those people have to live, right? Because you may want to say, hey, I'm both, and there's nothing wrong with that, which there isn't.
Right.
But it's the way the world treats you, right?
Yeah.
Like, so for instance, like the trouble and issues my girls are having at school, there are already kids who make comments like, oh, you're black, as if it's a bad thing.
Right.
So, they're already being taught from this early age to hate and be hateful.
Right. Have you had to give the talk then?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've got books, the talk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a daily struggle, because we've never raised our kids to treat people by how they look, but how you want to be treated. I think our teacher, the last time we went to a parent-teacher conference, said our child and 2 other kids in our class of like 20-something children are the only ones that have empathy. Right. So you got 3 kids in a classroom of 22 with empathy, and none of the rest do.
Yeah, well, it's one of the ironies of what you learn when you're oppressed. Yeah, I mean, the one-drop phenomenon, it seems to lead to the conclusion that what it's about is not race, but purity. I am pure because I'm white.
Oh, yeah.
I am pure because I'm white, and if I was anything less than that, I'd be black, which is impure.
Well, I mean, like out here, right? And this is just me speaking from experience, not to say that any particular group is like about what I'm about to say, but you have a lot of Spanish people out here that are what would be considered white passing, right? Their skin is fair enough to where at a glance, or maybe even just sitting down and talking with them, you might not assume they were Spanish, but actually white. And so, you know, I've never understood it, probably because I've been black my whole life, and I've never, desired to want to be another race, or to pretend to be another race, or hope that my complexion would get the approval of another race. But, I mean, that's a major issue in a lot of countries around the world, where the people that are fair-skinned generally have more money, are of more stature.
But it opens doors for you. I mean, it's like being beautiful or handsome opens doors for you, and being white or being lighter opens doors for you. Yeah. One of my cameras just turned off. That one's still going. Yeah, I would have been much more prepared about this. But
It's
the first time I've done video for ages, and I haven't used these cameras for like 7 or 8 years. Well, I couldn't even find the correct mic, so I'm hoping that the sound quality is going to be at least reasonable. So there's another question which is in the course, which is what is the what could have been productive about racism? Why do you think that people were brought here as slaves? And to what degree have people of your skin colour have been important to the United States?
Well, I mean, without black people, the United States wouldn't be the United States as we know it today.
Right.
We wouldn't be the superpower that we are today.
Right.
All that money and stuff came from slavery.
Yeah, I've very often thought that every culture, it seems to me, has succeeded through its use of slaves, whether it's been the Romans, whether it's been the Greeks, the Egyptians,
even in Africa.
The British and whatever. Yeah, even in Africa, yeah. So do you think then, and this is a strange question to ask, do you think slavery works?
I mean, clearly it works, I mean,
I hear that, I mean, it struck me that there's an awful lot of people incarcerated in this country that are producing not just license plates, but all kinds of electrical goods in prisons and being paid like 10 cents an hour for it.
Well, slavery is still
exists.
very much legal in the United States.
Yeah.
It's just under the guise of
the penal system.
Prison.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah. Do you think many people are aware of that?
Yes and no. I think at face value, most people just assume, hey, if you're in jail or a prison or whatever, if you're this horrible person, you're there for a reason.
Right.
So they don't really give it a second thought.
Do you think then that a lot of the police pressure on black people is because they serve to basically put people in prison and serve in that
Well,
purpose?
The reality is police were first indoctrinated into the United States to catch black people. Police were originally slave catchers and things of that nature. That's the reason why police came about in the first place. And then once slaves were freed, they were used to put pressure on black people, let them know their place, let them know where they could or couldn't go. So I personally think we should dismantle the police system. Not get rid of police, but change the name. Get rid of these military titles to people who are not serving in the military, right? The police shouldn't be at war with the citizens of their country. So why are we calling them sergeants and captains and lieutenants and, you know, things of that nature? If you want a title like that, you should join the military.
It is odd, I have
the
to say. I
country.
mean, in England, I've very often said that in England the cops call you sir, over here you call the cops sir, and that is a strange thing. I'm not to say that, again, like I've heard some horror stories about British police, but a British cop is, I think, is far less scary than a US cop.
Right.
I've very often said that, you know, when you get stopped for speeding, a British cop will say something like, "In a hurry then, are we, sir?" You know, something sarcastic, and they're you know, they know that they're doing a job. But cops in the United States seem to want to assert their power. They want to let you know that they've got power.
I mean, I've been taught from a very young age how to deal with police. I've been fortunate enough to have never been physically abused by the police. You know, they've definitely tried to intimidate me and do other things, but I can honestly say my experiences with police have been like 50-50, 50% positive, 50% negative.
What else do I want to ask? Because racism, experience of class. Yeah, my experience of class. I mean, it's a bit different in the UK because you get more of a class thing, or at least I think it's dissolving a bit more. But I grew up, my voice was really my skin colour over there. I used to talk like that, you know, more like a Cockney, talk like that. So you would never get on if you had my accent.
Right.
You would never, you know, get a decent white collar job and get earn good money. So I think maybe that is perhaps why it interests me here, because it's a different structure. You know, like I say, in America, I feel, even with my own voice, which I know that gets not so much as it used to, but it won't open doors for me. It does open doors for me here, and I kind of, that's why I appreciate it. But so a different set of issues. But I think that myself, I can see things a little bit more objectively, and that's why I find it so fascinating.
Well, I mean, even in a name, right? Like, my mother intentionally named me and my brother the names we have so that on paper you would never be able to know we were black right away.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's your brother's name?
Stephen.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. It's funny because the W word, a very common name for black people in England is Winston. And I've always thought, is it to do with, well, at least it used to be in the 60s, you know.
Yeah.
Winston, which is like, immediately think of Winston Churchill. And the strange thing is in Britain is there's a lot of people that seem to be so proud of older people and people older than me that would be, you know, proud of Britain. And I could never understand why black people in Britain and here have a fascination with the royal family.
That one I couldn't answer.
Because, I mean, they seem to me...
They were never important to us.
They seem to be the epitome of eugenics and racism. I mean, there is, you know, the royal family... I couldn't even marry into the royal family because I'm a commoner.
Right.
You know, and it seems to me the ultimate expression of racism and class structure. But there we go. So I think we've done about 30 minutes. Anything else you want to add? Or ask me?
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, I would just say, you know, life is kind of what you make it. For some people, life will be easier simply for their skin tone, right? Not even necessarily because of how smart they are, how good they are at doing something. Just simply being of a certain color can get your foot in the door, you know, for a lot of people. Whereas, you know, I've found being black, like I said, I've always had to work harder, be smarter than my peers, and things of that nature to succeed.
So what you're saying, you'd like to see a meritocracy, really?
I mean, that's probably different conversation for like how I would like things to be ran in the U.S. But I think it should be on your capabilities, and not simply because you look one way or the other. Never raise my children to treat someone a certain way because they look, white or black. But very clearly, and I always knew this would happen with them going to school out here, that they would eventually have to start dealing with the racism and all of that stuff. But it's very different when you're living it and your child is going through it and they don't understand why people are treating them a certain way simply because they are black.
And that's really what MLK was all about, wasn't it? When he said that one day I'd like to see little white children, little black children sit together, and how long ago was that? That was like 50 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
62, wasn't
it? Martin Luther King had a lot of good ideas. I don't think integration was one of them. Yeah, integration hurt the black community a lot.
Oh, seriously? No, that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go from depending on yourselves in your own community to produce your own doctors, engineers, contractors, builders, to all of a sudden saying to white people, hey, now you all have to be responsible for these things. Now you all have to teach our children, and we have to go into your neighborhoods to go to school and things of that nature, really killed a lot of prominent black neighborhoods and communities.
And you think it was important to keep them? I'm surprised you said that. Do you think that's a fairly common thought with black people? That
Some. I mean, it honestly just depends. I believe, how you were raised or how much information you have about what it was like for black people back then. You always hear the saying, if black people would just pull themselves up by their bootstraps, they wouldn't have these issues.
Then we had, of course, the Tulsa massacre in 1920.
That was one of the things I was going to bring up, and that's not the only neighborhood that stuff like that happened to, And if it wasn't done in violence, it was done in secrecy and board meetings and, designating highways to come through certain neighborhoods, just completely killing off those neighborhoods, Outside of indigenous people here, we're the only group of people that have consistently been killed off and systematically having our neighborhoods destroyed, our businesses destroyed, families separated, you look at welfare, it's designed to not have a man in the home, right? A woman couldn't get that welfare money if the man was in the home. Why would you do that? If you truly cared about these people trying to make a life and trying to become better, statistics show, children are far more likely to have certain issues without a father being present in the home. So why would a government system with that same information set up a system for someone to get money by not having, a father in the home?
Interesting, yeah. So I think we'll probably close it here. I'm worried about the battery running out.
No worries.
So thanks a lot, Walter. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for being my neighbour.
Of course.
Thanks for doing this, and maybe we'll do
y'all are our favorite people.
And maybe we'll do something like this again some other time if I go into more detail about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Cheers, man. Thanks a lot. Take care.
No worries.
And thanks very much. Thanks, YouTube, or wherever this goes to.